Hello, friends. Welcome to Season 2 of the Rybickulous Faith Podcast, where real stories meet real faith, and yes, sometimes real learning curves too. Before we jump in, a quick heads up. The audio and video of this first episode is not perfect. Despite my efforts, it's on me. It was a rookie tech mistake, and I'm just learning as I go, and I'm owning it. But here's the good news. The stories are powerful, the conversations are honest, and the quality only gets better from here. Thanks for giving us grace, sticking with us, and showing up for what really matters. Real faith, real hope, and real people walking it out together. Our first episode opens in Bessemer City, North Carolina, with some truly amazing Jesus people. Country band Small Town Sunday. Let's check it out. Welcome to the Rybickulous Faith Podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Rybicki, and today I have some very special guests, Small Town Sunday. From the heart of Bessemer City, North Carolina, Small Town Sunday brings a refreshing blend of faith, harmony, and a heartfelt country soul that reaches audience far beyond their small town roots. Deeply grounded in their Christian faith and inspired by the rich sounds of 90s country greats like Little Texas, Diamond Rio, and Black Hawk, Small Town Sunday offers a sound that is both nostalgic and new. A timeless mix of tight harmonies, genuine storytelling, and uplifting messages of hope. Their journey began in 2012 when Matthew and Holly and Stephen, said it wrong.
Yes,
First joined voices to the country vocal band Dixie Still. Their unforgettable harmonies quickly earned them recognition, leading them to win Country Group of the Year 2 years in a row at the Carolina Music Awards and perform alongside major country acts such as Joe Diffie, Black Hawk, and Chris Lang. As their lives and ministry evolved, so did their name, ushering in a new season as Small Town Sunday, a title that reflects their roots, their mission, and their heart for worship through country music. Together, they create a sound that celebrates the simplicity of small town life, the beauty of family, and the unshakable foundation of faith, all wrapped in the warmth of country harmony. We have Matthew, Holly, Stephen.
Yeah, we are going to have to spell that.
Aggravated here for your. Who are you as a band, and who are you when the stage lights are on?
So Small Town Sunday is just like the everyday person. We've been through, let's say, we've been through some grief. We've been through divorces. We're just everyday person. Real people. Yeah, we're real people. And when we're on stage, I feel like we try to always be who we are. We don't try to sugarcoat anything. We go to our concert and we tell our story through tears or whatever happens. And we sing our songs that God has given us ultimately to try to change someone's life, or if someone's hurting, they know they can make it. Yeah. Truly authentic. We try to be.
Where did the name Small Town Sunday come from, and what does it represent?
So we started out, as you mentioned, as Dixie Still.
Mm-hmm.
And then a little small bit in there for your listeners and your watchers there. We went from Dixie Still, the country group, to when we first started in what they're calling Christian country these days. It was Dixie Revival. And then when we signed with our manager, Michael Turner with Straight Arrow Management, the first real discussion we had was, hey, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Let's talk about the name. And at first it was like, well, we still want to be kind of true to who we are. We're all, small town Southern people, steeped in the Southern hospitality and everything else that goes along with it. But we didn't want anybody to be off-put by hearing the word Dixie because of everything that surrounds it. And we didn't want someone that maybe needed to hear the message of hope to be completely shut off because of the name. So we were like, yeah, that's a good idea. Let's change it. So we all brainstormed, and I actually was fortunate enough to come up with the name. And then the things surrounding it, we were all born in small towns, but we all still currently reside in small towns. And then Sundays in small towns mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. And maybe not just in small towns, but Sundays in general. Sundays, some people it's lake days, some people it's church, some people it's, football games and backyard barbecues or whatever it is. So it always means something different to everybody. But then lastly, the spiritual aspect of it is that if you really think back and consider that the greatest thing that ever happened to humanity came out of a small. There you go. It's pretty simple. It's not as it's not as crazy and deep in thought as everybody might think it is.
It's simple, but sometimes that's the best part about it.
That's it.
Let's go over your journey. You began as Dixie Still, as you said,
What did God teach you during that season that prepared you for this new chapter?
Steph, that was a pretty good lessons learned. We got a lot of opportunities to do a lot of things. We like opening up for Joe Dixie, Chris Lane. We love country music. We all grew up on it. We love it now, the new and the old. So it was a good opportunity for us to venture out and get to do some of those things that we wanted to do. But I think there just came a point where I was like, okay, this is where I need you to go. This is the audience that I need you to go pursue. And we've kind of been doing it ever since. We all grew up in church. We all have those roots embedded, and we just put our country vibe, I guess you could say, and our Christian roots together. We've all, I think, had a heart for God and wanting to see other people know Him. It's been fun.
God gave you all the talent. Using it to glorify Him. I say this, even when we sang country music, it's amazing to me how God would put people with us. We had a record that we just called the Faith Project that we have since renamed and all that under a different name. But the countless people that would just kind of be attractive and something's different about them. I'm not really sure what, but I'm going through this. I can't tell you how many copies of that we gave away while we were doing.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons that we even carried it. We had a brand new all original. Went to town and did the whole Nashville recording thing back when it was still a thing. It doesn't mean much anymore these days. Yeah, it doesn't matter. But we would take that project and, like she said, just kind of give it to people. But the way that God, even in the strangest of environments, as a band, unless you're a headliner, as a band in a bar, pretty much, your job is to keep people dancing so that they stay thirsty, so they spend money at the bar. And if you do that and you do it well, you're going to come back. But it was amazing that even in those environments, we were in it, we just weren't of it.
Yeah.
And the people that God allowed us to, like Holly said, to just speak to and give those projects, and we'll never know. I don't think there's ever been anybody that's ever emailed us or hit a social thread or anything and said, hey, remember me from such and such event, you gave me this CD and that kind of thing. But I feel like that as the example we were called to be, I feel like we did effectively what needed to be done, whether we ever done it.
You planted the seed.
It's not up to us whether or not it goes in the right direction and gets bad elements after that. When we got to talk to people that may never darken the door of the church, and that's why we love going out into places because that's where Jesus went. And we want to be as much like Him as possible.
Was there a defining moment when you knew God was leading you into the new season? And got you.
Holly had some friends from growing up here in the studio, being in the studio. Well, you didn't grow up in the studio, you went to the house. But being here, she met studio musician after studio musician. A lot of those folks are, play in Nashville there. Even a couple of the engineers that moved on to LA, so it's just kind of a big, like you hear people say, network, over the years. Her grandparents passed away, left her some funds, and after paying some bills and things, what she decided that she wanted to do with that money was go to Nashville under what she considered a friend's strong advice, studio musician friend, and cut an original project. So we spent months gathering songs and this thing. But long story short, go to Nashville with the project. It's a great project. We start touring it up and down the East Coast, playing anywhere, basically, with the promise that, hey, I'm going to help you with this. I'm going to help you with that. This person needs to hear this. That person needs to be there. I'm pretty sure I can slide you in here and there, just like all the wolves and sheep's clothing do. Because at the end of the day, our money was as grand as everybody else's. I'll just say that. Even to the fact when we started realizing that when we were in town and we give this certain person several days notice, they were going to be at, such and such listening room or at such and such place, come on out. There was always an excuse. Now, I understand that people in that industry stay extremely busy. My thought process was when we're in your backyard, we're not asking you to travel 6.5 hours to see us. We're asking you to spend 15 minutes and look at your product that is on display and see it. Anyway, so after a couple of years of pushing this record and none of anything that was ever happening, ever, the jealousy and the bitterness and the resentment And I would dare say that the hatred almost for the music industry set in me. In the words that my dad, who was a pastor or was a pastor, recently retired, he spoke to me one day out in the yard. He said, "Son, I want you to know that God needs people in all kinds of music. It doesn't necessarily have to be gospel. God needs people everywhere." And to be quite frank and quite forward with everybody, I was pretty ticked off at God. You know, I was like, okay, you let all this happen. You allowed all this great music to come together, these great players, and this great, fantastic studio at Music City, and all the promises were made, and we've worked our butts off, and you have allowed nothing to help. We've spent a bunch of money and have gained very little from it. And I was mad. And so we decided that because it was just a vicious merry-go-round of the same old, I had decided I was just done. I wasn't going to be anybody's background music anymore. Nobody cared about your original music. And this was back before social media was a big thing. So this was back in, 2012-ish. So yeah, wait. And I let that just fester and fester and fester. And I would try just to not think about it. I put guitars in cases. I hung guitars on the walls. Like, I would come out and help you, occasionally out here, but I could care less about right. Yeah, I was just done. And it was God's fault in my eyes. So I mentioned earlier very briefly that we're like everybody else. Well, Holly was saying that, we hurt like everybody else, but I was the one that the addiction set it on. I was never, when I first got out from underneath mom and dad's thumb and started playing in clubs and things, for me, it was never cocaine or drugs or any of that. It was never women or any of the stuff. For me, it was alcohol. And that was it. And so when I first ventured out, alcohol and country music seemed to have gone hand in hand for me because that's how I started it.
First, alcohol was my drug of choice as well. I was a bartender. So it was literally country bars, drinking all the time.
And see, that's what we were talking about that this morning at breakfast, how you never know how your story, if you'll be faithful to go and share it, you never know how much it's actually related. This is the first time I've talked to you. You've had some correspondence with Holly. That's just, thank you, God. That's incredible. So when the music left, alcohol did. And she can tell you it didn't have to be a Saturday night or Sunday night. We had a pool out back. Had some friends that stayed in the apartments right next door, and it didn't matter. It could be Wednesday afternoon when you got off of work. If we were going to drink, we were just going to drink. Like that night, the pool was frozen over. There was a fire pit up there, and we could stay warm. Or if there was people running around doing cannonballs and being stupid in the middle of summertime, we were up there. And if we were up there 9 times out of 10, you could find anything you wanted to drink up there. And it just snowballed like it often does. And I let my health go. Stop making wise choices. I would eat, just the craziest things you can imagine at all the weird times. And as you know, overconsumption of alcohol is not good for you. Like physically, never mind the mental state it puts you in, but physically it does severe damage.
Oh yeah.
But I was mad. I was just going to figure it out on my own if I ever did. And then at 36 years old, which I'm 43 now, just turned 40, so 7 years ago, we took our kids to school. We went to breakfast at Cracker Barrel, like was the norm. Got up, went to pay the bill, and I was like, man, I've got some pretty severe heartburn. I was like, this is crazy. Went on all day. My dad came over. We were doing some remodeling in the house. We were laying some floor. It's like, man, I just want to feel good. That night, tried everything, drank milk, ate Tones, drank a bottle of Pepto. It's just like nothing would fix it. I thought in my head that if I would, get some of what I thought was gas out, that it seemed to make me feel better. So I was drinking beers, every couple of minutes, fast as I could, trying to, didn't sleep that night, got up, took my son to kickboxing, drove back home. Holly was in the studio working with the group. This was Saturday. I told my daughter, who had turned 15 at the time, I said, something's not right. Take me to urgent care. I don't think this is heartburn. I thought maybe I had severely pulled a muscle. Wasn't right. Went to urgent care, and it was in February, so everybody that had a sniffle was there. I sat there. And nobody even acknowledged, I guess, that I was in the room. I walked outside. I called my dad. He said, son, you're at the urgent care there on Rybickulous Road by the hospital. I said, yeah. He said, if you're hurting that bad, and he said, you should probably just go off the emergency room. Let me check you out. I said, well, I'll do. So walked in, told them my symptoms. They do all the usual, just pick you off and put you in line. Because of my age, I was 36 years old. Well, I sat in the waiting room at about, I don't know, it was maybe 2 hours, close to 2 hours-ish. And a nurse just happened to come by and she said, you know what? We haven't gotten your vitals yet. He said, come back, let's get your vitals. Let's check you out. We went back, she checked my blood pressure, and I almost saw the look on her face, like, that's a really bad number. She hooked me up to an EKG, and the EKG no more printed out. She ripped the paper, it's gone.
Yeah.
And when she came back in, it was a swarm of people. And there was a doctor's desk surgeon standing there. And he said, Mr. Branch, you've had a heart attack, and you're having one now. The way these are printing now, you are shaping up to have a massive impact. And I'm like, here I am, I'm 36 years old. The last thing you expect to hear is a doctor look at you going, there's probably a very good chance you're not going to make it. We don't do something now. As a matter of fact, I found out later that as they were taking me up and preparing me for a heart stent, the surgeon came out and told Holly, he said, look, I'm going to be honest with you. It's been so long since he's been in this position with his heart. There's a 50-50 chance this guy is going to go. He's going to not make it or he's going to. That's just the way it is. He said, he has a heart attack, a massive episode while he's on the table. There's nothing we can do about it because we are inside of his heart attack. So my dad was there. He had met me at the hospital and he was back there, when we got the news. And of course, they put IVs in you and all stuff. And he looked at me and goes, what's wrong? And I looked at all those people in the middle of being in cardiac arrest and said, can y'all give us a room for a second? And they were like, are you done? And the nurse looked at me and she said, you have to make it quick. She's like, you got about 30 seconds. And everybody walked out the door. And Dad said, what's wrong? And I said, I can't die. I'm like this. And you have to know my dad. You have to know growing up with him. He was always, for the most part, he was very like, and he could have very easily thrown all of my shortcomings and the way I had to live and all that stuff up at me. And I don't know that these were his exact words because, there was so much going through my head, but something to the effect of nobody wants that, but only you can make it right. And I was like, is that even possible? And we prayed and we prayed and I told God very, very earnestly, I said, you can call this a deathbed prayer if you want. I said, but you know me, even when I wouldn't know it. And I said, if it is in your plan to be something better than what it's been, then I'll do it. But I got to get through this. And man, in 2 days, I was going home with a stent. I was up walking. And to this day, all the reports, the cardiologist can't find any major damage to the heart. I had been in cardiac arrest for 36 hours. I said all that to say this. What was the defining moment? I think it was before the heart attack, I think it was after the heart attack, before any of the songs were thought about, before I even called stepping back and was like, hey man, we've got this stuff. I remember specifically I was out cutting grass. This was probably April, springtime. I had to move in. And I remember telling God, just talking to it, and I was like, look, I get it wrong. I'm going to get it wrong a lot. And, if this is what you want, then you're going to have to make it so painfully obvious that there is no escape from it. And I said, how I'm going to be? Because, if anybody is more undeserving to try to get on stage and sing about who you should be, knowing how I feel, you're going to have to make it the way it needs to be, because it's going to have nothing to do. He's just been faithful, just like you said, just like Paul said, whatever he starts in, he's going to be faithful to complete it. And he started to work way back in Dixie Still in country music. And it was me that kept taking the turns thinking I was driving and that I was not, I knew where it was supposed to go. And all the time, and I'm not saying that God punished me with a heart attack. I'm not, but I think sometimes God allows things to happen. And they make you go, okay, I'm really in this. I'm really going forward. So, from people, from close friends of ours just calling us and saying, hey, I think you need some gear. You got to get, all the way from people just volunteering their finances and allowing us places to play and help us with trailers and vehicles. It's just, if I can ever look at anybody and say, this is a specific, I know this was a God answered prayer the way I hope. God answers all of our prayers. It's just yes, no, and maybe, or wait, or whatever. But if there was a yes answer, I know that was it. And the last thing I'll say is I have never been happier in music, because everybody always misquotes that verse in Proverbs. You know, if you put the Lord first, delight yourself in Him, He'll give you the desires of your heart. Everybody always thinks, well, if I get my life right, I'm going to get the things I want. But what it means is, if you delight yourself in the Lord and you put Him first, your desire then becomes His heart desire, what His heart is. And so then if your heart is in line with His heart, then of course the things He wants accomplished is going to get accomplished. We're just doing our best to keep the dust wiped off and pick ourselves up and dust ourselves off and just keep moving. So that's the long answer to the story.
Being a Christian band in the country music space isn't always easy. What challenges have you faced, and how has God met you there?
You know, we were just talking about this, and we just had a long meeting.
It's never kind of been framed.
But if you talk to the industry people, the Christian one, their answer to Small Town Sunday is always, well, you're too country for Christian. Well, if you talk to the country music industry people, it's, y'all are just too Christian for country. Well, I mean, that's kind of what we do. So where do we fit? So we are just kind of in this season of, we do the kind of music that we do. And wherever it lands, that's just one of those things you got to trust God in. And we get with that constant pull, like, okay, where do we market this? Because it's a business too. You have to look at, okay, this is how I make my living. How am I going to do this? But I've been threatening to make a little video, and I think I'll do it. Conversation confirms that I need to do it. You go back and you start looking at the comments on your social media. Like, your song helped me, blah, blah, blah. Or I used to be this way. It's Small Town Sundays music really helped me through this. And at the end of the day, none of those struggles really matter because you're doing what you want to do. You're being obedient. So wherever it ends up landing, we're okay with it. If it's more in the country music side or the Christian music side. But that's the biggest struggle. It's like even the industry people don't know where to put us.
Yeah. It's kind of like, you know, and this is just a stupid example, but you ever watched anybody play roulette?
Yeah.
I feel like that little ball on the roulette wheel.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just going to go until finally, you know, it gets drug into a spot. And there it is, you know, and I just kind of feel like a lot of things are just a little ball.
Little ball bouncing around. How do y'all personally stay rooted in faith while navigating the pressures of performance, travel, and expectations? Jared?
Man, we've got, I wish he could have been here. That guy, he always kids me, or kids to both of us, that we have two different mothers, that, you know, that we are just, we're brothers. You know. But man, that guy, he works for the North Carolina Department of Corrections in their transportation unit, and that guy will work 60, 70 hours a week, most weeks on average. But he's always the first one to be learning the material for it. He's always the first one to be just brushing up. He's always the first one down here. But he's always the first one to look at us after the performance and go, you know what? It was really heavy on my part that we were too busy to thank God for the opportunity before we were on stage. And, you know, to give him the glory for what we're doing. And it's not, and that's how real this is. There are people in music that will lead you to believe that when they get on their bus, they are worshiping, and when they get off their bus, they are worshiping, and when they get on stage, they're worshiping, and when they're carrying out equipment, they're worshiping. As the biggest bunch of crap you'll ever hear in your life, excuse my language, nobody lives their life that way.
Because we're all spending.
Because we're busy. Life is busy. And there are times, we talk about transparency and being real, there are times that, yes, we've shown up to a venue late, and we've rushed to get sound check done, and we've all ran back to the bus, and we're trying to hurry up and shower and get ready. And yes, we're walking in and sitting down as the preacher is going, or the event, or, you know, coordinator, whoever is going. You know, Small Town Sundays, you're with us, you know, and there are times that we don't do that little bit quiet to just say thank you. And Jared's the one that does that, but he never does it in a way that's like, we got to get better at that. You know, he's not that much older than we are, but I almost look at him as kind of like the group dad. He's just, he just really holds us down and makes us remember that, not because of egos or anything, but he really helps us keep front and center that we're not standing in front of the cross, we're standing behind it. And that everything that gets, you know, that we get hit with, it has to hit the cross first before you. And I love him to death. I would definitely say Jerry.
Yep.
I'd like to say it's us that we have all kinds of plans.
Yeah, Jerry, that we missed you.
I know.
It's working hard.
It is.
How do you discern when a song is just a good song versus one God is calling you to repeat?
I think first and foremost, if it's relatable to us, then it'll be relatable to somebody else. If you're singing something or you're trying to minister something that's not really hitting you in that way, then it's not going to be very effective when it goes out to somebody else. First and foremost, those songs that we either write or that are pitched to us, they have to speak to us first. God, it's amazing, the time that we were going through everything with all the loss, all the issues we were having. What year was it?
21,
22. Yeah. That God just seemed to funnel these songs into us right as we needed. Like it was songs that we needed at the time. And didn't even know it. And didn't even know it. And that God's good like that.
Yeah.
So that album that we did that year is very special to all of us.
What's the name of it?
This side of it. This side of it. Sorry. We just released another. We're getting ready to just release another one. This spring. Yeah, this side of it we have. So it's a collection of songs that spoke to each of us. We would have a song that would come to us, and I would be like, "This." I think it may have been this side of it. Sometimes this side of heaven is hell. It's not always sunshine and rainbows. And Jesus said we would have tribulation. Never told us everything would be smooth. So that song, there's another song that I love. It's called Crazy Christians. And it just talks about maybe what the world's view of us may be. That some of the things we do may seem crazy. But Jesus changed the world doing that.
He was the first crazy.
Yeah. If he's crazy, I love it crazy.
That's the one that I said on the way here. I think I told you.
I think I just told you.
I think I just told you.
About the guy going into the church.
Your music carries strong themes of faith, family, and everyday life. Why are those themes so important to y'all? I think that's country music. Growing up in the South and having the Christian roots and the country music roots. Personally, and I think for all of us, that's why we love country music so much. Is because it is just about everyday living. Taking that, especially when we write our own stuff. He does most of the writing. That's all we keep pointing out. We might give him a little line, but he gets all the credit. But we try to incorporate that same thing in Christian music. And not to take away from the worship song. There's so much beautiful Christian music. But I just think we need more songs about the reality of life. Which song best represents your heart and mission right now?
Oh, that's a tough one. It's a
tough one. If we do a recent one, I guess, I'll go ahead and talk about it. I do. There's a song we recorded called Until You Love Jesus. In our studio here, this is what I've done my whole life. And there was a similar moment that I had when I was out here and we were trying to work. And I'll preface it by just kind of let everybody in on what we've been through. In 2021 and 2022, it started when I lost my dad. He passed away from cancer. 8 months after that, I lost my baby brother, or my only brother, to alcohol. He misdiagnosed so much that he pretty much drank himself to where there was no coming back. And just about 2 months later on Christmas Day, I lost my mom. And it was awful. But 3 months after that, we lost my beautiful mother-in-law very tragically. And then Stephen lost his dad after that, very tragically. So it was like so much grief. And that's when we found those songs and we were recording that project. Well, there was a moment during all that. We were out here working. And the way modern recording worked, it's all a computer, I came out here to get all our files ready for mixing. It was like almost done. And the computer went off. It crashed. Like the whole studio is down. And during all that time, he'll tell you, I stayed out here. I worked on those songs. I got them perfect. It was something I could do to get my mind off of everything. And I got so mad that day. I got mad at God. And I just said, why did you take this from me too? I said, well, and it was almost instantly, I think it's the first time I almost audibly heard him speak to me and say, I didn't take this away from you. You've been in here trying to fix it with music, but I have to fix it. And I wouldn't take anything for that downtime now because he did fix it. Yeah. And out of that, Matt got an idea for a song called Until You Love Jesus. Mm-hmm. And even more name the music video, we tried to incorporate just the very real things that people go through in life, grief, depression, alcohol, finances, sickness. And at the end of the day, he fixes it all. So I encourage everybody, if you want to go check us out, that's kind of been the theme song. You think?
Yeah.
You can add one to it.
For me, she was talking about everything that it went on, Matt losing his mom, and then Matt, a song for his dad, called Days He Can Believe.
Oh, yeah.
And there, he talks about, shows that there are days that we don't have it all together, and days that you're like, God, what are you doing? And it's on those days that God seems like He shows up the strongest.
How do y'all maintain unity as a band, especially when you're also family?
I'm just,
Yeah.
honestly, it sounds as cliche as sell ice to Eskimos. We have done this so long together. We've been together since 2012. They've been together as a group. They were in a group called Route 66, which was a gospel, like a country gospel thing. And then before that, Holly was in a trio called 3 for 1. Back, they've done stuff with everybody from like the Crab family to the Martins to, they did stuff with that. They were, for back in the 90s, they were kind of like pushing the envelope, with the contemporary Southern gospel thing. And then Stephen sang with them for a little while after they lost one of their members. And so anyway, I think that we've done it so long that when we say we're more like a family than a band, I think that's really the honest to God truth.
We pretty much live life together.
Essentially,
Some major things that have happened in all of our lives kind of happened either together
or talking about starting, starting it back up or whatever. Stephen had gone through some things, and he called me at like 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning. And, anytime you're phone at that time, you're like, what's going on? So I sat up in bed and I realized it was Stephen at the phone. He's like, I don't know what to do. I was like, where are you at? He said, I'm in Tennessee. I was like, what do you mean you're in Tennessee? And he told me, I was like, you don't live in Tennessee. You live in Mount Airy, And he told me, and we're not going to get into all that because, it's not for everybody to hear. I said, well, how close are you to your house? And he's like, it says I'll be there at like 4 something. And I said, well, you come on toward the house. And he ended up staying here for a while, and getting his feet back under it and some other things. And and that's just one small, tiny example. And it's not anything about, look at, I was there for somebody or he was there for me or our doors are always open for everybody. And I think that thing that pastors quote, it's the only thing that comes to mind. It's kind of stupid. And I'm thinking, God really won't say that. But when, at the very end, after people take their marriage vows and all that stuff, and it says, what God has brought together, let no man put asunder. I don't think that necessarily just applies to husband and wife who have just taken vows. Because we decided that we were making a vow to God between one another that He was driving. We would work. We would do what was necessary. And, the Bible says it's better to not make a vow at all than to make it break it. Now, I'm not saying that we haven't broken it in our actions or in our deeds of thought and things of that nature. It would be foolish for anybody listening to think, oh, well, they think they, we're completely the opposite of having it all figured out. But I really believe that, I think that's why we can hold it together. It's because we're not trying to pull the strings to keep it all tight. The bow tie. He's got it all laced up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's why He's brought it together. And there's not a power in hell that can tear it apart until He's ready for it to be done. And it's not going to be done until He's completed the work that started. And right now, it's just not done.
Sharing life and vulnerability with each other.
Yeah.
And try connection with each other.
And that's the thing for your listeners too. And I'll shut up because I end up talking a lot. And I guess that's the way.
I'm a writer too.
But I think the thing, honestly, you said something about, being vulnerable with each other, going back to each other. That's the difference. Somebody asked me one time, like, man, what's the friends you got? You seem to know it, just about everywhere. How many friends you got? I was like, I got a bunch of acquaintances. I got a few friends and a couple of people I consider brothers. And there's a huge difference. And let's just talk about the real world for a second. You need to keep your circle small because more people are going to be pouring water in the boat than helping you bucket it out. So just be careful who you open up to and how you open up because, and I'm saying this from experience, the Bible is very true when it says that iron will sharpen iron. And that's not just brother to brother. I think that's the three of us. It's anybody in ministry. It's anybody that considers himself a believer and that really has for making sure that things are representing Christ the way they think they'll be represented. Iron's going to sharpen iron. But at the same time, that same iron that helps sharpen you can cut down on the crap that gets thrown at you too from other sources. So it's being able to know that I can call that man right there and be like, hey, I can't talk to anybody else about this. No, I didn't rob a bank. No, I don't need a place to bury about this. It's nothing like that. That I can't talk to anybody else about. And I have faith knowing that when I hang the phone, he's not calling somebody and being like, hey, in the name of praying for Matt because blah, you know what I mean? And I think a lot of times Christians use gossip as a prayer excuse, but or prayer as a gospel. But anyway,
Or virtue signaling.
exactly, virtue signaling. Yeah. But anyway, that's how I think we stay together personally.
What does accountability look like for you spiritually and relationally?
I think when we have something going on in our lives, I can bounce that off from that and, get his feedback. Same with me.
Well, sometimes it comes from the craziest of places. We'll have a bomb day.
Yeah.
We'll get somewhere we're going, and somebody not have any idea we just went through that and say some. I mean, God used people outside. I can't remember where we were. That was the church here in hometown. We had some remarks made on one of our social media from an actual pastor, talking about how we dressed or something.
We couldn't possibly lead others in worship of the Lord because we were wearing.
Yeah, so it just stuck with us all kind of, we're still trying to do what we do. But, we got there and then the pastor of that church, unknowingly to any of this, said something so perfect. And it just kind of all was like, oh, well, I'm not worried about that anymore. I think God uses people outside the circle sometimes too. What do each of you uniquely contribute to the band? I do social media and a lot of the recording and producing, editing, and stuff like that. Matt does all the production too. But also,
Pretty much, and I have to mention this. My 17-year-old son, about to be 8, Preston, he is self-taught, plays keys for us, does an amazing job. He is very much in the teenage years of his life, but whether he realizes it or not, the contribution that he makes on a personal note for me, the contribution he makes by stepping up, getting on the bus, or showing up at the dance and playing and doing in person and doing all the things that he does, the contribution for him is a personal one for me. It is like just a reinforcement, joyous, like just blown away sense of gratefulness and gratitude because he's part of it, because he shows up, because he wants to be part of doing what he can do for his age group. And you'd be surprised the number of teenagers that stick around and just talk to They want to talk to us.
oh yeah,
Yeah. Even though we try to look like the cool people, they kind of migrate. Preston's got that. And he's doing his part to share the gospel. He doesn't realize it. I try to tell him that, and she tries to tell him, that we're proud of him all the time. But his contribution is like, when I say he really makes Daddy proud, and
well, and he can be
nobody else can make that contribution.
he can be one of the likely people sometimes, like we're all stressed out about a certain thing and get comes Preston just with like words of wisdom.
There are so many other people behind the scenes that contribute so much. My daughter Bailey, some of y'all have heard, she helps with merge. And man, it's her favorite worrying. She's great at pictures to jump in the car and hit the road wherever we go. She loves it. It's her and then there's so many people that have contributed financially or just offered advice or encouragement.
You've played big stages and small churches. Does one impact you different?
Being a musician, and because I get to experience a little bit of it, if it makes sense. I get to help create a song, and then I help get to produce a song, and I'm going somewhere with this as far as the question. And then I get to perform the song, and I get to run the audio, usually because most of the time they don't get a sound out of this, but I get to see it from beginning to end. Does that make sense? And a lot of times it is so hard to see the reactions in the larger stage than it is when you're 10 feet away from somebody. And I think for different reasons, there are 2 different reasons I would prefer both of the stages, and I'll tell you why. The first one is the closeness and almost the intimacy of just a small setting. For that very reason, you sometimes you can just see the impact that music has on somebody. The reason I prefer larger stages like fairs, festivals, and things of that nature is because 9 times out of 10 they'll have folks there that in the church. So it impacts us differently. And I think, well, me, I can't speak for those folks, but I think for me, that's why it impacts me so differently. Would everybody like to play in front of 100,000 people? Of course. Have we ever? No. Will we? Oh, maybe. But we always joke between us and say, you know what? We're just trying to get the gospel to the people. You know, our manager, Michael Turner, is hilarious. And that's what he always says. He'll call and be like, hey, man, how you doing? What's been up? He's like, you know, I'm just trying to get the gospel to the people. You know, and so we've kind of adopted that as our, our own slogan. But that's why, for me, because you can connect very intimately with somebody and see the way that God's using their music to make them think or to make them realize what does ministry look like to you? First and foremost, I want to say this for us. I can't speak for the other folks in music. For us, the cross being the first thing always that somebody sees is our goal. It's what we want. But they call it the music business for a reason. And we are called entertainers for a reason. You have never one time talked to somebody about going to a concert and said, who did you go see? Well, I mean, who did you go hear? What do you say? Well, who y'all go see? Who y'all go see? We love all kinds of country music. I'm an Alpine fanatic. I love this. But it's okay to be sane. When people see you, people expect a certain thing out of you, even in Christian music. You never, ever get a second chance to make a person. From the way you dress, to the way you look, the way you conduct yourself on the stage, off the stage, how you interact with people, how you treat people. And I think that because we were given a platform, I think that it's evident in the type of ministry that we try to pursue, that the change that Paul talks about, all things become new by the renewing of your mind. The changes in the way we treat people and the changes in the way we address people. And we were given stage to show that Christ doesn't expect you to take your different thing, or to get your tattoos removed, cut your hair, or to stop wearing your pants, or it doesn't make you any less holy because you're wearing cowboy boots or Vikings and you're not wearing Sunday shoes. And I think that as a whole, the church has gotten so wrapped up with how you look outwardly, than what God prefers. And all that is a preference. And I think us being able to be on the stage allows us to be in ministry and perform and still have a good time. And let people know that it's okay to clap your hands or stomp your feet or, get up and dance to a song. It's okay. But that the way people are treated off of the stage, I think, is what allows us to be the way we are on stage. Because we try to be as real as possible. And that may have been a jumbled answer. There was a ball in my head that I was trying to get it. But I am not going to cover up my tattoos, take my earrings out, my chain wallet off, or wear Sunday shoes in a suit coat because I think you will. Case in point, and these guys on platform, we were just talking about this. Catfish Cooley was a comedian that made his name on his vulgarity and his nastiness and his filthiness and his complete, utter disregard for anything more. The man had an ultimate encounter with Jesus Christ and was just completely transformed. I mean, he did a 180. I don't know if you've seen him with the stuff or quality or found out about, but he had an amazing, life-changing encounter with Christ. Look into this, right? Just recently, the church he was saved in, because he has a past there. Just because you get saved doesn't mean your past disappears. Let's just be real. People are going to know you for what you were and the things until you're able to prove different by the renewing of your mind. He was like, guys, I got pretty much in a nutshell. He was like, I do like to work. I'm a comedian. This is how I make my living. I think he and his wife were divorcing because of something. I don't know if him becoming a believer or a Christ follower intensified that. I don't know the story. It's not my business. They're getting a divorce. His church came to him and pretty much told him he was no longer welcome because he was getting backwards. And they weren't going to have that shadow of what he was doing because of the places he was going to be and the things he was going to be. Instead of having him go out, shine his light, and go try to play an example. Yeah. That's the example. Yeah. It's going to make people mad. And it's okay. If you're so wrapped up in being a Pharisee that you can't see that Jesus uses people because of the revealings of the mind and not really shocked, then maybe you need to go. Because we don't serve the same Jesus. That's it.
And then as far as the ministry, when you look out we get to look out and maybe something we said or something we say, we see that people lives. You don't have to have it all together.
Oh, tell them about it. You have to learn.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not my used to close you right where you are.
It's dirty as you want.
Man, that's the Lord.
Because I mean, if you want 3 examples, here we are. Of people that do not have it together, not perfect. God is, absolutely that guy. Very, very close friend of ours, and didn't used to talk to the Lord at church very much. And him and his wife came one night to one of our first concerts. We may have been still Dixie Revival.
We had just released this on it.
We did that song, the acoustic.
We did it acoustic. We have sang, but it was all acoustic.
And it was actually the song that you were talking about earlier. I think I just saw Jesus. And we sat and we watched this grown man weep, and we've seen God just squeeze his heart and tell him that you ain't got to have it all together. And he came up to us afterwards crying and telling us, what that meant to him. And it's stories like that is why we do what we do.
And since then, knowing him and knowing what he's been through, and the fact that he will come up to us reading still as a message from time to time and just say, I want you to know it's because of your music that I've renewed a relationship with Christ, and I'm trying my best. And that's a one story deal. That could be the only story we ever hear. Let's be doing something. Not in our power, but we must be doing something the way it needs to be done. If people are seeing Jesus,
Well, he loves people right where they are. So.
Now, we talked a little bit about this earlier. How do you pray before going on stage, and what are you asking God to do?
It's really heartfelt, even as redundant sometimes as it gets. I think it's still a beautiful sound to God, being intercessed through Jesus. I think it's a beautiful sound when you ask him to continuously remind you not only of the grace, but how the grace is able to be used, how it's able to be applied. And it's because the sacrifice was made, so many years ago that nobody else could make. And I think it's special. And I think it holds just the dearest place in his heart to be reminded that he allowed his son to be completely torn apart at the hands of humanity. Because he loved us enough to do that. And I think that's why it is so important to us to make sure that we stay by time and not ever try to be in. Because without the things that happened on it, none of it's possible.
Always help other musicians and singers if you're nervous like that. It's good because you can't do it. And I think that's always my first. I know I can't do this song. To be with people. Stop stirring in your hearts for this next week. Anybody who's curious, you can go find us on all the streaming places, on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, YouTube. They do a really good job. Very, very. Ask about Small Town Sunday, but all of our albums kind of have, our it's called The Wall, and that is kind of a fake project. It's just renamed. It's called The Wall. And the one Stephen was talking about, this definitely has a theme. That's when we was going through all of our mess. The Good and Bad is fixing to be released. The complete album is, but the collection of songs that have been released over the last couple of years have just been about how we got through it. And the new stuff that's going to be right around the corner, probably late spring or summer, is all about grace.
Go ahead, Taylor. It's going to be called the Grace Sessions. The Grace Sessions. Because everything kind of just points back to Jesus and, grace. I think we're going to release just an actual EP. We're not going to work a song at a time. We're going to just drop 4 songs at a time.
So we do a lot in North Carolina and South Carolina, Virginia, Tennessee, Georgia, California, Indiana. We're going to Mississippi this year, probably.
There's been pops to Texas.
Yeah, that's
pretty cool.
It's just a way out there. But I mean, we go wherever. Anyway, we will try to make it work if somebody wants us to come. Are you open for business?
Absolutely. And the easiest way to do that is we have a wonderful booking agent, wonderful lady I've known for years and years. Her name is Darlene Keech, Keechch. And you can email her at tireswinglive@gmail.com. At gmail.com. And she is wonderful. And you talk to her on the phone And she's one of those people that you'll just fall in love with. I think you've known her for years. She just has a way of talking to people. And the thing I like about her is she's not a salesman. And I just think it's fantastic. She does a wonderful job. And Darlene's just a great person. So yeah, tire swing line at gmail.com is how you get this. God, you know exactly who this is, we are, where we're at, and the season that we're all in collectively, individually, as businesses, as podcasters, as musicians, and husbands and wives and dads, friends, just where we're at. And then you tell us to come to you just like we are. And I think a lot of times we forget that it doesn't just apply to salvation. It applies to just how we are. And you know how we made us. And so we come to you just like we are right now, in the middle of the excitement and the new season, in the middle of still the pain of the seasons. We just ask that whether it be with this podcast, whether it be with our ministry, or whether it be talking to people on stage, thousands, whether there's 10 people in a little church in a storefront somewhere, that we always stay directly behind the cross, because without it, none of it's possible. And our prayer is that you are ultimately glorified and that you are ultimately lifted up, however that is the way, because you said if you would lift it up, you would draw it. So I pray that we always, and this podcast, thank you, the ability, the willingness to have an audience, to share her heart with others and to help others share their heart for you. Thank you for the time. Thank you for this session. We love you, and may we always let others know. In Christ's name.